without further ado, I'd like to introduce my friend, business partner, a man I consider a hero, and a giant among men, Curt Doolittle.
Why do I feel undeserving of that introduction? Well, I'll get started. Thank you. You know, when you're a guy sitting at a desk in 1990 and you're saying, how do I got to create it. This is chaos. Conservatives sound like idiots. We're talking from a moral and religious position, which doesn't mean it's false, to a bunch of people who are talking in a pseudoscientific position that is desirably true, even though it is false. So I started out with that simple objective. I end up here thinking of, oh my God, what kind of crazy person would spend his life trying to unify the sciences, right? And try to create a value-neutral language of ethics and politics. You'd have to be crazy. Well, it's kind of like an incremental crazy instead of like a crazy to start with. Because like I'm pretty arrogant, but I mean, I'm not that arrogant to say, wow, I'm going to solve this amazing problem. No, I just stumbled into it by accident by wanting to solve the problem of making it so that we could talk about truth and ethics and morality and economy and politics without lying, or even better, by limiting others from lying. So that was really my holy purpose. And now I got a room full of really smart, awesome, moral people that I get to talk to every day, who sort of like, how many guys here have been told by their wives they all sound that when you've, or somebody else when you've been in, because where's Brandon's wife? She's not here. So we all sound the same, right? So anyway, so there's been like generation, because of that accidental nature, there's these generations of thought. You know, and I was starting out by myself. I worked in AI, and then I worked in law, and then I worked in economics. And it turns out that this is the same path my mentor, Friedrich Hayek, took. He started out with basically neurology, neuroscience that they knew at the time. He worked in economics, and he worked in law. And so what you figure out is, here's the brain, here's how people cooperate, and here's the limits they need on their behavior. So I followed this same sort of journey. I didn't expect to have this wonderful room full of wonderful people, though, at the beginning of it. So if you look at the generations, they start out with me talking about capitalism v3.com, which is an economic position, proprietarianism, which is a philosophic position, and then the Natural Law Institute, which is a legal position, just pretty much following this same arc. So we've been through now, basically, given those name changes, we've been through a bunch of generations. We had me by myself, we had us and as libertarians, we had us as the Proprietarian Institute trying to solve the real hard problem, and we've had us as the Natural Law Institute once we converted to saying, okay, well, we have to be serious grown-ups now and become an activist organization. So we have to go from research and development, which is what we've been doing. And how many guys think we sort of finished last year? We sort of got there last year, right? And so, yeah, some hands on the way back. We're sort of done with R&D. Thanks to Dr. Brad, he's the one who forced me to be humanly intelligible, which was, we switched, that originally, I'm an epistemologist, right? I mean, that's my core function. So my original thing is to start from the logics, because, you know, I'm a nerd, and I'm a logic nerd, and I really like the epistemology, and I like the logics, and I like the grammars and the analysis of language and how that evolves. But you want to try to explain that to people? No. Doesn't happen. And that was my first rude awakening. The second thing is you can say, well, you can start from ethics, which is what people mostly want, which is like the libertarian point of view. Start with ethics and work out, we're outward. And I said, okay, can you hear me in the back? Yes. Great. So you start from ethics, and then you work out from ethics. And I'm like, well, people can understand that, but only if they agree with your ethics. But what Brad and I decided to do was start with the physics, which is start from the quantum background and build up. And once we did that, we found out, well, the ternary logic of the universe turns out to be pretty explanatory, and it unifies the sciences clearly for people, and then we can talk about ethics. and then we can talk about the logics. And once we have that, we can come to the conclusion that holding whatever, I didn't curse, see, I skipped one. Brad's giving me the... So what we are able to do is we achieve the goal that I originally sent out with, which is a value-neutral language of ethics and ethics, morality, economics, and politics. And it's a lofty goal. And so the part I'm proud about, right, the part that matters to me as a nerd, is that I'm very proud of having unified the sciences, or what's called the Wilsonian synthesis, which is E.O. Wilson. He's a biologist. He's very famous. And he's said, well, the problem is we need the unification of the sciences. Well, I didn't start out to unify the sciences. I just wanted a way for us to talk like a conservatism, like adults, because it turns out that conservatism is the language of adults, surprisingly. So I ended up in this position where I feel like, wow, we've really got it. So what we're able to do from there, though, is we're able to say, okay, how can we make law a science? Not like what other people want us to do, which is say, you must do this. But it says these are the limits within which we must regulate ourselves so that we can cooperate to the best of our ability at all scales. And we have the most maximum choice. So we don't say in the via positiva, which is you must, which is what the authoritarians want. We say you may not, which is what the conservative says, which is anything else that isn't unethical or immoral is, by definition, either amoral, meaning meaningless, ethical, or moral. And so that's what we've managed to do. So in simple terms, we've created the science of human behavior, the science of economics, and the science of limits, which is law. And I don't know about you guys, but it started out being me, but I mean, pretty much everybody in this room's contributed somehow, right? I mean, it's a group effort, and I used to be able to bring off the top of my head all the people that had contributed, what particular advantage. I can't do it anymore. I mean, it's not possible because so many people have contributed. All right, so what I talked about is generations, right? So we're early in generation 6. And I think I got across that while I started out on this adventure, I had a very simple objectives. We're all here, and we've basically unified the sciences. Now, is anyone else nerdy enough in here to understand how important that is? Yes. I mean, it's not even conceivable, right? I mean, it's on the scale of the Darwinian revolution. It's profound, and we did it by accident. We did it organically in this age of the social media age by working together as a big network of people over basically 20 years, but most of it over 10. Isn't that pretty amazing? So we get to do the little backpack here. We pat ourselves on the back that, and so
highest return on investment project in human
history. Yeah, it probably is, because we're all volunteers. We did this. We created. So if people think, well, you need to have the academy and research institutions. Do you think we could do what we have done in the academy? I've been burned at the stake. Some of you know I tried to get a PhD. So great things don't happen because you have this tremendous excuse me. I'm trying, Brad. I really am. I am trying. Do you know we have that piece of software that monitors you during your talks, and that it measures how many times I curse? It also measures I talk 70% of the time, Brad talks 30% of the time, and I curse most of the time. I'm trying. We're in the Boston area, right? This is the hometown of shit talking, right? And masculine nonsense, right? And so, I mean, I feel more liberated, but we're going to try to behave it and maintain maintain professionalism somewhat. As long as we understand, we did a profound thing together. And what matters to me is I don't want it to be about me. It has to be about us, because it's us that made it happen, and it's us that will continue to make it grow. It's just, can you imagine telling somebody, I do this all the time, what do you guys do? Well, we unify the sciences and create a formal law of human cooperation, results in natural law of cooperation, which gives us the ability to eliminate lying from politics. What did you say? What?
You gotta punish the liars.
It's like, I used to say, burn a libertarian phase. I was like, well, truth is enough. Well, it actually turns out it's true, right? I mean, truth. If you just get to truth, the problem is, how many people really want the truth except nerds? That's not really true, but people want the truth as long as it doesn't cost them anything. So we're kind of in a glorious accident. It's been by organic growth. And as we learn, as we become more competent together, as you guys beat more sense into me by ridicule, abuse, and sarcasm, we develop a more and more stronger and stronger piece. And we're pretty much done with research and development. So when that happens, you say, new options are available. So we have more options available to us than we had as talking about economics. We have more options available to us than we talked as political philosophy. We have a lot of options to us as we talk about law as legal reform. But as activists, we have a lot of options. And moreover, as you can see by being here, well, at least what I've noticed is, Curt, you need to work faster, get more done, I want to do this. Instead, we've got something for people to do. And so we have people who can participate. And they don't have to participate as us figuring out which grammar is being applied here and which one of the ternary logics and what scale is being applied here. We can just give people solutions to problems of the real world, and we can use the same things the enemy has been using, which is lawfare, to bring it about. Now, you saw two guys here last night who are basically successful at this problem. It's not rare. It's not impossible to do. But it's just the conservative temperament is leave me alone. Right? Leave me alone to be responsible for what I'm willing and able to be responsible for. But that's not what the opposition thinks. They work by the opposite thing, is we need everybody doing the same thing. I'm not going to describe right now the psychology behind that because it's depressing, but they think that they get their information from each other, they get their validation from each other, they want it to have responsibility together, which is really evading responsibility. And so we think by an opposite sort of trajectory than they do. Anyway, so that's my sort of warm-up. We've been through 6 generations, and we have to be proud of how far we've come. And I sort of take it that everybody is. Did I beat that horse well enough? Did I get that point across? Okay. So now that we have more options, and we can make use of them. Now, I happen to really like legislation, litigating. I love arguing. I find this really fun. But we have to understand what our real goal is. Our goal is to restore our civilization, or at least prevent it from collapsing at the rate it's collapsing, because it's pretty serious, right? Now, most people don't know it only really took 70 years for Rome to fall. It's only taken us how many years? About 70 years. So we can be like the Romans and not take responsibility for it. We can take responsibility for it. The problem is that the whole point of the opposition is to maximize irresponsibility so they can centralize authority. Right. But you ever seen that T-shirt that the nerdy, really super physics nerds wear that has lines of symbols on it, and it's the complete code to the universe? How many people have seen that thing? If I was prepared, if I didn't have technology problems, I would have that code up here. But you actually can describe the laws of the universe in symbols about 4 lines long and like this. Now, the problem is, can you understand them? Well, I can say, those are the symbols that represent the logics of the laws of the universe. But they're all symbols. You have to translate it into English. Well, if you translate it into English, how many lines is it? Well, if you say, okay, now I got to translate it into English that you can understand, right, as a neutral context, and then it's going to be 50 pages. So we have an interesting thing. That's the science of Western civilization, right there in one paragraph. And it's a fascinating thing. That's what's called construction from first principles. So that is the equivalent of the algorithm for the universe that the West has developed. And it's really interesting that we developed it when other civilizations didn't. In fact, every other civilization by 800 stagnated or declined. So we did this, and it's really interesting Because there's only three ways of human coercion, right? There's force and defense. There is trade and or reciprocity and trade or boycott. And there is seduction and exclusion. I like to use, they use inclusion and exclusion, but I like to use seduction. Because the favorite tactic of the left is baiting into hazard. And so that's all they actually use is seduction and baiting into hazard. So when I look at this, I'm like, that's how simple it is. But there's a really fascinating word here. And that word is responsibility. And that's actually what makes us different. Is if you look at the different groups, what are you willing to be responsible for? I'm willing to be responsible for everything. And I think most of us feel like we not only want to be responsible for what's under our domain, but we sure as hell would appreciate it if everybody else would be equally responsible for what's under their domain, right? So what's really interesting here is, so what's the difference in responsibility by civilization? If you took the African, the MENA, Middle Eastern, North Africa, if you took the Indian, you took the Chinese, you took the Central Asian, you took the European. Even among Europeans, you move from West Europe to Eastern Europe to Russia. What's the difference in the scope of responsibility people have? So it turns out that Europeans, for a lot of very ancient reasons, developed responsibility as their first principle, which has happened very easy. That's why we have law as our first institution. We don't have state first. We had law first. That's what made the Indo-Europeans. Why do they have law first? Because if you're a bunch of land pirates in chariots running around stealing cows, and it takes a whole family to fund the bronze, the wheel, and the horse, then nobody's powerful enough. You can't concentrate power. So you have to get people together voluntarily. So what's the political order of pirate ships? Democracy. What's the political order of Indo-Europeans? Democracy. What is the way you develop, what is the government and governing institution of those people? It's voluntary, right? It's contract. And what is contract? It's natural law. So we developed this completely by accident. It just turns out that if you look at those four lines of laws of the universe, that's what these are. It's the same thing. And so when we say we've unified the sciences, we've said this is the physical operation of the universe, but the natural law, which we've sort of been evolving for 5,000 years, is just the extension of the laws of the universe to the field of cooperation. And what's the difference between for the universe cooperating when two hydrogen and oxygen get together and decide to make water? They don't decide. They don't have a choice. We get to, some woman gets to pick you up in a bar and somebody's got a choice. Probably her. I'm trying to make I can't see your face, ladies, but I'm trying to make you laugh with that one. We have the ability of choice. We have the ability of choice because we have the ability to predict. Nature, can the universe predict? Can it? Does it have a mind? Can it predict? No. It works by trial and error, but we can. So we can only do that, and we can predict cooperation. So what's the equivalent of energy availability in the universe and cooperative availability among humans? It's trust. And so we have a high trust civilization. You know why? Because of that word, responsibility. So now that we understand that we've done a great journey together, we understand that our civilization discovered the natural law. It's important. We didn't make it. We discovered it exists because we can compute like the universe does faster than the universe can, and we can choose to act that way or not. So now that we know that, we have choices, right? We have a strategy that we can pursue that helps bring us into being. So our goal is the restoration of our civilization. And moreover, I've been concerned since 1992 that we're going to have a civil war. And the problem is, if we have a civil war, we're going to have world wars. And if we have a world wars, we're going to have another dark age. Now, I don't know if, is my good friend Rudyard here? No, he isn't here yet. Rudyard doesn't like mornings. What a faultist, right? What Rudyard Woodruff. He's produced a video recently that mental illness is the equivalent of the Black Plague for our time. So the thing is, we do have options, but what options are really going to work? Has debate worked? Has it? Has it worked with the opposition? No, it hasn't worked. Have we exhausted the vote? Right? Yes. All right. So have we exhausted the legislature? Is there any evidence our legislature can function? No, we haven't lost the legislature. So we've lost the debate, we've lost the vote, we've lost the legislature. Have we exhausted the court? Doesn't seem like it. Oh, that's much better. Not that I like the sound of my voice, but can you hear me back in the back better? Great. So now I'm a little thrown. So the thing is, we haven't exhausted the court, and thanks to Saint Judge Scalia, which I can't think of another more profound title to give him, Scalia understood at least part of the problem is that the court had been used to circumvent the people, the legislature, and the Constitution. And so what the court's done now, and whether you agree with it or not, I don't really have an opinion. The Roe v. Wade issue and the Second Amendment issues are examples of the court saying these are choices for the state, not for the federal government. And if you see what the court is doing now to regulatory features, what they're saying is these regulations are circumventing of the people, the legislation, and the Constitution and the law. And so we have had some improvement in the court. This is because a group of people just like us, in about the same number, in Yale, in Harvard, and Chicago, got together and created an organization called the Federalist Society in the late 70s with the ambition of correcting the abuse of the law that had happened through judicial activism in the 60s and 70s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. So we understand that the court does work in this country, and we can make use of it. Furthermore, can we really rebel unless we've exhausted the court? So we have the court remaining, maybe. And one of the things I look at it as is, if the court agrees with us, we move our issue forward. If the court disagrees with us, what are they saying? They're not legitimate. And so the court has also failed. So if we're being responsible citizens, like the people who founded this place, and we say, okay, well, let's exhaust what is right and just before we resort to anything else, we're trying to do the same thing. So if the court failed, we would normally, in the English tradition, go to the monarchy. Because what's the monarch? And we think of it. There's a lot of mythology about the monarchies and the kings and the queens, because it was the Enlightenment was an attempt to replace them with the middle class, upper middle class. But the truth is that our monarchies have always been limited not only by our common law, but in other words, our traditional law and our common law, but by the church law, and so they were always limited. And so by the time we get to the UK, to get to the modern time the United States is formed, the monarchy, especially Elizabeth, who was the most recent monarch that understood all of this, is that their job is via negativa. They don't tell you what to do. They're just above the law in the restoration of the law. Does that make sense? When they say the monarchy is above the law, it doesn't mean they can do anything. It means they can do anything to restore the law. And so, don't you love how we get these little bits of nonsense and they just ignore the important part? So when we look at the monarchy, what happens if we don't have one? If we don't have a monarchy, we don't have a judge of last resort. So who, in the absence of a judge of last resort, what's our only resort?
Us.
It's us. And it's pointy objects and things go fast, right? Right, so while we were criticized as being the people who are trying to bring about this revolt instead of the people who are trying to end the necessity for it. And so it's very easy to criticize us, which is one of our more serious problems. So in order to have an effect, we have to achieve legitimacy. Now, I mean, I'm not exactly the most reasonable character to be the front man. I have, all right, I can't. There's somebody here who can, but I'm not going to point him out right now. So we have the thing producing legitimacy. But even if I could be that front man, why would I want to be? Because it would be about me. And what does the enemy do when anybody sticks his head up? They cut it off. So it can't be about me. It can't be about our organization. It has to be about doing what's right in order to prevent what's wrong and the hardships that will come if we don't take responsibility to restore, as Brad would say, law and order. So we have a plan. And the reason this isn't here is because we don't want it to be yet. We have a plan. We have the science to back it up, which much of it's here, but we'll get. We have the law, which we're going to seek to impose, to restore, and the major differences in what we're asking to restore are fixing the holes in the Constitution, which is what I'm talking about tomorrow. Because today, I'm trying to get to an interesting point of how simple this problem is. We have a program to learn it, including if Brad keeps whipping me, and I can get enough of Martin's time, we'll get the book out. We're producing the pamphlet first. Does everybody know that? We're producing the pamphlet first. The pamphlet is Brad's recommendation that we put out something very simple and accessible first that just covers the main points. It's sort of like a quick reference book. Because the time for us to produce the science it's just an phenomenal work. And for us to finish the pamphlet and the law is something we can do in the time frame I think we have available to us. And the truth is that the Constitution, really, it contains most of the pamphlet. We said, who's going to participate? So we have, just the normal things to say, here's how to participate with us. But then we go to who's going to get involved in legal activism, political activism, law enforcement, and military. And legal activism is like the kind of things we saw last night. But of course, I have loftier ambitions. I'm trying to get stuff before the Supreme Court. It may sound crazy, but I actually am pretty certain we can do it. And of course, we have the donors for people to. I'm not going to be a money grabber right now. All right, so we have a plan. We have the science to make the law, and we have the way to learn it if you need to learn that, and we have a plan for action. So did Brandon do a good job of organize us together? Yes, it's all him really, and it's this guy too. I forgot to because I was not going to say that when I first started out. I wanted to start out with a thanks to. There's the two guys who actually run this place are up here, and I'm just the pretty face. I'm not very pretty. All right. So I'm going to go back. So we have a challenge, though. What did they do to Socrates? Does anybody know what they did to Socrates? Yeah, they killed him. You know, what did they do to Aristotle? They tried to kill him. He just got out of town. What did they do to Galileo?
Locked him up.
All right. Sorry, what?
House arrest, I think.
It was not good.
Yeah, he did.
It's interesting. Why did Darwin get such a negative reaction from some, but such a positive reaction from others? Huh?
Elite adoption.
It allowed the replacement of the elites in the church with the clerical class, the administrative class, right? So he was able to was empowering a new set of elites. But we still have a lot of anti-Darwinians. I mean, is that the whole basis of the left? Is this anti-Darwinian? That's the first principle of the left. It's anti-Darwinian. The problem is we still have the left, who's basically matter of fact, what's the whole post-war? What was the pre-war program? Was by the progressives, and that was eugenics. How did we go from Christian progressive eugenics to post-war communist dysgenics? How did that happen? So, in fact, is Darwin is appreciated in all circles, except when it's not convenient to appreciate him. So I'm a little worried about us for the same reason. I mean, I have stalkers, death threats, FBI at my house. And it's not even it. You know why? Do you know why the FBI came, it turns out? One of my stalkers was the guy that went and talked to them. I'm like, you kidding me? The guy that you're talking to and getting all this crap about me is from a guy I'm trying to get a restraining order against because he's threatened my life.
Tax dollars, hard to work.
Well, what's weird is, it's pretty hard to understand our stuff, right? It's not trivial. And the FBI shows up and he's tall and he's handsome and he's fit and he's, educated. He's read all my stuff and I'm like, dude, I'm like impressed. Why aren't you converted? The part of being a politician is smiling when people say stupid stuff. And part of being a cop is having no expression when people say stupid stuff. And he said, I'm a CEO and I know what to do when people say stupid stuff. You act like you heard them, but you don't pay any attention to it. So we have our challenge to us is that anybody who's disrupting the entrenched system of power is called a threat, or in our case, a dangerous organization. And so, but I'm like, well, we're a small organization, right? I mean, we could, if we wanted to, we could get a couple hundred people to show up pretty hard. But we filled this room, right? We filled the venue. So, but we're a small nascent organization, and we're dangerous. I'm like, what? We want to restore the economy. We want to restore rule of law. We want to make the family the central object of first primary object of policy, and we want to get us out of perpetual wars on foreign territory we have nothing to do with. Yep, we're the evil guys. We want to make it so that two people don't have to work and can still have one person can work and they can still have a family. We want to make it so that you aren't extracted from by every baiting into hazard possible method in the planet. And I'm a libertarian, and I think this stuff is awful. So we're small. The other problem is that conservatism in general is an anti-intellectual field. Why is that? Because there's no anti-intellectualism in this room. I mean, I'm going to make dick and fart jokes if I can, but I mean, it's not anti-intellect. We're an intellectual group, yes? So, but conservatism is traditionally anti-intellectual, and that's partly because there has been no intellectual moral explanation of conservatism like us before. We're saying conservatives are right because they're responsible. Responsibility produces trust, and that trust is what makes the rate of Western development and our wealth under it so possible for us. The Japanese got us on a bunch of things, they do better. So the second problem is that, I didn't finish with my list of problems. All right, so I covered the intellectual. The second thing is because of that spectrum, the left tends to converge to a point, and the right tends to diverge to a line from libertarian to fascist. when women are more likely to conform, or the feminine mind is more likely to conform, and remember, it's a 70-30 overlap. 30% of men have the feminine bias in cognition, right? 30% of women, which the ones we love a lot, which we wish there were more of, is that conservative women are still feminine, but they have the masculine responsibility bias. So what happens with conservatives is you have men who are intrinsically less dependent on the thoughts of others and more likely to justify their own thinking. And their own thinking will fall into a framework of one of the grammars. Everybody know what a grammar is here? Do I need to explain a grammar? A grammar is a paradigm consisting of dimensions of permissible content, the vocabulary, and the logic that goes along with it. So theology, philosophy, science would be three major paradigms, right? There's more, but those are the three big ones. And so what happens is we become attracted to the grammar that we feel most competent in because it would most satisfy our interests. So the problem with conservatives is unifying them. It's almost impossible. So the only reason conservatives usually ally is in response to a threat. Do we have a threat?
Yes. Oh, yeah. All of them.
Right. But then we need a solution that makes those factions all happy. We have to, for some reason I get that. Some people think I'm not a Christian. I'm like, I believe in God. Where's this come? It's because I have to, when I figure something out, I beat the hell out of it until there's just bloody pulp left and I can pick up the one grain of truth. Right? So we have the Christians, we have the social conservatives, we have the Jeffersonian legal conservatives, we have the classical liberals, we have the various stripes of libertarians, and we have the guys who are so fed up, so overwhelmed, so feeling like they're outcasts, they want to be extremists, fascists, right? I used to joke that, now I'm regretting it, I used to joke that we're truth and market fascists, and that kind of blew up on me. I meant it as sarcasm. But so if you say there are all these drawbacks, right? They're frictions for us, right? There are also benefits. So what are the benefits to us? How many people understand the world better and feel more at peace with it and more tolerant of others because of the work? Yeah, it's everybody, right? That's the whole thing. Is all of a sudden you're like, wow, they're not evil, they're just them. And once you understand it's them, it's like, okay, well, that's just their mind working. It makes a difference, right? So you have we have explanatory power, we explain why. We have predictive power, we can predict what people are going to do. And we also have the mindfulness, which is the peace of mind that results from it. How much of the mental illness problem is a lack of mindfulness? It's basically all of it. So we've gone through so there's some benefits, right? But we are faced with a bunch of challenge. What about the scope and depth of our work? How many guys in here are really fascinated by the ternary logic or, the real super nerds, right? It's us. Right? How many people are really fascinated by the fact that we can explain the reason Western civilization evolves faster and more higher trust? That's pretty freaking cool, right? Right? And how many people understand the civilizational differences are based on the three means of coercion, basically the three means, and that civilizations are bound by the order in which that they develop those technologies, right? That's pretty powerful knowledge, right? So there's a lot of mindfulness that comes from it, and there's also an effect. We used to say IQ is basically a measure of genetics, but right? That's what they're trying to measure, G. But the truth is, can you understand the world better? Right, it actually has a profound impact on you. So we have the constructive epistemology, testimonial, truth, and reciprocity, right? We have the ternary logics of cooperation, the four sciences of physics and logics, and the quantum background through group evolutionary strategies. We have the formal operational logic of law. We have the constitutional reforms and the policy that would bring about return the family to the central objective of policy, like the individual is the central object of law. The family needs to be the central object of policy. What's the first system of production? You were supposed to say that all at once. What's the most important thing? Family. Because what makes people? Does the industrialization of the process of making children appear to be working psychologically to produce healthy, mature, capable adults?
Hell no.
Hell no. Okay, so it's the family has to be back to the center of policy instead of the individual. What do we have in common as individuals versus members of families? We got nothing in common. So what do you see happening? People diverging into very individual factions of self-expression. But is that helping us produce intergenerational coherence, intergenerational cooperation, intergenerational trust, and maintaining our high-trust society and the economic and social benefits of it? No, not at all. But so the next problem we have, which, okay, I asked the ladies already and they gave me permission, right? I have permission to talk about a tough subject without an accent, right? I mean, and these are real women. These aren't fake women. We have controversial topics. And the problem is, what happens if the post-war era that's anti-Darwinian, and if we flip it around and try to figure out why, what if we figure that that's causing what's happening there? What if the truth about that is painful? Was Darwin painful? Was Galileo painful? Was Aristotle painful? We're freaking painful. You know why? Because every one of those guys was talking about something remote. And then we got to God and I was like, oh, this is not good. And now we're down to, holy shit, it's like me. I don't have to like really deal with it if it's abstract. But if the problem is in me, then it becomes a very different thing. So if Socrates, Aristotle, Galileo, and Darwin met resistance, how much of resistance could we meet if we have a controversial thing? When you say something controversial, it has to be wrapped in love. So you can't, while we can speak the truth, we have to speak. That's why I asked him about his emotion and persistence last night. You have to speak about difficult things with love. Does anybody think I operate from any other perspective than that? How many people you think I'm working from something other than love of mankind? Is anybody? Okay, nobody's fucking reacting, so now I'm thinking you're all on the opposite side. I love mankind. I love women, especially. I have a problem. So you're going to hear some controversial subjects next. And that's why we're a dangerous organization. Because we have a lot of people invested in a falsehood that's bringing harm to us because it's a desirable falsehood. Wouldn't you love to believe that there's no such thing as scarcity? Wouldn't you like to believe that the human condition is one of oppression rather than domestication? Wouldn't you love to believe that human behavior was plastic and malleable and that the blank slate was true? Wouldn't you love to believe that there was no such thing as mutation, genetic load, and the organization of the classes by the ability to bear responsibility? Wouldn't you love all those things to be, those false promises to be true? They're nice false promises, right? So we're considered a dangerous organization because we love humanity too much to let it fall. How many people agree with that?
I agree with that.
Yes. So when we're talking to the opposition, you're really talking to a child, and you have to love the child, right? You have to correct the child, you have to advise the child. If necessary, you might have to discipline the child once in a while. But what's the difference between the adult and the child is responsibility. The scope of responsibility for one's self, one's mind, one's self like body, one's thoughts, one's mind, one's words, one's deeds, and the consequences of one's deeds. So we operate from love, and we have to keep that in mind because we're so angry at what the left has done, and we are so angry that we have to look at this with love. Because if we don't, we're them. Does that make sense? Now, do I sound happy, nice, and sweet enough now? So I'm going to tell you the central problem, and nobody gets to be mad at me for the truth. All right, you probably all know this. So in the arc of history has been really interesting. If you start with the Middle East, it's a bottom up, right? It's a slave economy. It always has been. We talk about Egypt really nicely, and except when you realize it was a stagnant slave economy forever. They just had food, right? So it's a bottom up or civilization. What's the Indo-Europeans who start out as warrior horse raiders with bronze horse and wheel? It's an aristocratic civilization. It's a top-down. What about a Chinese civilization that starts out as warrior caste that becomes the state? What's the difference between those 3 points of view on the political compass? You have the state, China. You have the faith, the Middle East, the South Eurasians. And you have the contract, which is Europeans. And because of those such initial conditions, this is where we are today. This is where we've always been. You know how hard it is to get somebody to change their metaphysical value propositions? It doesn't happen. So if the left has been trying to change our metaphysical value propositions, why are they doing that? Because they're trying to stop the people who have competency and agency and replace them with the people who have approval. So the arc of history is interesting. For us, if we look at what happened during the Enlightenment, is the rise of the middle class. Right? What happened during the industrial era? The rise of the working class. What happened during the 20th century? The rise of women. And women arguably rule everything today. Isn't that strange? It's true. Because who determines elections?
Women.
It's women. Okay, but now it's more important. I'm trying to get to this. I'm trying to bait you into taking the wrong decision so that I can correct you. Is it women or is it single women?
Single law.
All right, that's who's actually throwing the election. If we were talking about married women with children and adult men, is there anything that's blue in the country? There's a couple of spots. One of them we're near. Right? So it's actually that men and women are a pretty even split in the population. There's more of them, women, because we die a lot. One of the virtues of having an X chromosome is that you have more repair facility. And so women live longer. They're also pretty awesome. I like women. Have I said that already? I like women as well. The problem, though, is that every time we integrate a group, they try to bring their metaphysical value judgments into the new scope of agency they have. Now, the Greeks and the Romans did this said, you can rise if you can demonstrate responsibility. They called it merit, or honor, but it's responsibility. So you had a barbarian, a slave, a serf, a freeman, a citizen, a sovereign. Right? You had that hierarchy because the hierarchy of responsibility. Well, but what do we have today?
Equality.
You jumped ahead. All right. So my point is that every time we bring a group of people in, they bring with them their class instincts, and they cause a disruption until they're fully integrated. And this has been interesting because during the Enlightenment, who had agency first? Guys like us who go out and become pirates and take over colonies, right? That's who developed agency first, right? And so what laws against behavior developed first? The misbehavior of men. So what's the Constitution largely about? The misbehavior of men. Now, in the common law, there was the misbehavior of men and women. What is shrilling? What is gossiping? They're crimes. You know, a Karen, being a Karen's illegal in most of our history. You can get put in the stocks for it and made fun of and other things. Right? And though you probably don't know this, you get put in the stocks, right? There's actually people responsible for making sure nothing happens to you. You're just supposed to, it's basically to shame, right? So we're in this era where we've not only added women and their sensibilities, but we've added people who are not from the European background and don't have high responsibility. So there's nothing new about what we're going through today, except one thing. What is the difference between men and women? Oh, excuse me, I did it again, Brad. You know, you could back there and you could stop me when I do this. Between the cognitively feminine mind and the cognitively masculine mind. Well, it's the difference between predator and prey. It's the difference between thinking about everything all at once and thinking about one thing at a time. I'm hitting this rock and that's all that's going on in my head. I'm trying to get the ladies to laugh. So it's much easier to be a guy. How many people understand this? How much easier it is to have the mind of a man? It's way easier. I mean, I can think like a woman for about a half a second before I want to have a nervous breakdown. All that's going on all the time, and it doesn't freaking stop. And I'm like, I'm watching TV. I'm fire gazing. It's a football game. Nothing else exists. I'm fine, thank you. No, that means I'm fine. Okay, so the real difference, though, people think, people don't know the depth of the science I work from, especially, or we work from. But I'm like, I know a lot about neuroscience, right? I mean, I know a lot about it. And I'm like, there's the difference in the brains is actually quite simple. In order to have a bilateral body form, you have to basically duplicate over the brain, right? The other side. So you basically duplicate the brain. And so you get two hemispheres. So how the hell do you make them work together? Well, you have to have priority over one in some circumstances, and you divide it up. How did nature divide the hemispheres? Time. What's prey? Now. What's predator? Then. So the difference between the masculine and female mind is basically evolved from the difference between the hemispheres, which is women think, the feminine mind thinks about everything all at once, in time, and the man thinks about one or two things at once, over time. And we divide the labor of time, right? And so what you find is that we live in a world based on the time we are not only sensitive to, but capable of. I had this conversation last month with a big room of people, and I was surprised anyone actually followed me. It was awesome. So when you have this, so what manifests is what's the prey response to responsibility versus the predator's response to responsibility? What's the prey response to consumption versus the predator's response to consumption? So what you have is males seeking responsibility in order to obtain status by which to capture the attention of those awesome things we call ladies. Right? And we accumulate capital in every way, form. But in order to do that, what are we risking all the time? I'm risking you're going to beat the shit out of me. Right? Most of you probably can. You're all bigger than me. So you're risking getting the shit beat out of it, and you're risking making people angry with you. Right? Do men hold grudges? A little bit. I mean, every fight I've ever been in, and I've been in a lot of fights because I was raised before you guys. I've been in a lot of fights. I mean, I have the chipped teeth. I have the chipped teeth to prove it, and I have scars on my knuckles to prove it. And you know what? I'm always friends with the fucking guy afterwards. Why is that? You know what? What? We resolved the conflict. It's called settlement. What's the purpose of the Supreme Court? Settlement. What's the purpose of the legislature? Settlement. What's the purpose of the ordinary courts? Settlement. What's the purpose of smacking each other in the head? Settlement. Right? So the problem is we're kind of dangerous. And the reason there's no alphas anymore in this animal sense is the ladies figured out they could get 3 of you guys to kick my ass really easily. Right? And once rocks and tools became available, it got really easy. So you can't afford to be a dick anymore. I mean, I get away with a lot of it, don't you? You get a lot of. How many else guys get away with being a dick pretty often? So what happens is you have a division of labor and time. That's also division of responsibility and time. How long does a child live without having continuous resources and attention? Not long. How long does a tribe live without it? A long time, really. So I always have this parable of the river, where the guys we're standing in a river of time, right? And the guys are looking out at the river this way, and we're predators. And the girls are standing on the inner circle of that circle, and they're looking on the inside saying, we got to survive, and we've got to take care of it. And so you have women, the feminine mind thinks in time about relationships and experiences, and the masculine mind thinks about systems over time. And this is why, if you go in the literature, the sex difference in cognition is systematizing, masculine, versus empathizing, which is feminine. And if you're extremely healthy, like most of us are, now I'm a little autistic, so I get to privilege here, but is that the really balanced ones are somewhere in the middle. And so what you're looking for is some equilibrium there, and some of us are just more masculine, more systematizing, and some of us more feminine, more empathic, or solipsistic if it goes wild, or autistic if it goes wild with males. So it's a really simple thing. So the difference is that men pursue capital and women pursue consumption in time. It's all time, right? What's the difference between anything I said here? It's just time. And so that's why when you're talking, my wife would say, you can't say that. I'm like, well, I know I can't say that, but I mean, it's what it is, or that's rude. But there's a difference between the familial, the interpersonal, the social, and the political. So what are men really good at? The political. Why? Because we're trying not to kill each other. Now, I've always been attached to a woman for one of the reasons, because I'm totally fucking incompetent without them. And the second reason, why have I always had a female assistant? Since I was 22 years old. I've had a secretary. You can't use that word anymore. They're called executive assistants. Or your aide. All right. So why? Because I have no idea what that other person feels. I can tell you what their IQ is, probably within 3 points, but I have no idea what that person feels. So I always go, Joe, what the fuck just happened in there? Well, this person thought this and whatever, and they tell you were an asshole, but he really liked you, and she thought you were just over her head. I mean, I don't know. So the division for me as an autist, the division of labor is a gold mine of opportunity for intersexual cooperation. On the other hand, what you see is that what's happened is in every other class that's joined the polity, women are the most divergent. Is it really women, though? This is my point. You see, I'm baiting you into this. Is it really women, or is it single women? Because what makes a woman as responsible as a man? Children. Even among single women, are they all the same? Right, so this is like the Naxal-Axel problem. We're talking about distributions. But if you look at the voting record, all of this that's happening is to single women. So what is happening as the family is being dissolved? Mating is disappearing, marriage is disappearing, reproduction is disappearing. And so what did we do when males got leverage, got more agency in the Middle Ages? We developed laws. What did we do when middle-class men got more agency in the Enlightenment? We got new laws. What had happened when we got into the industrial age and more ordinary men had? We got new laws. One of them was against the local dominance of Catholics, mostly being Irish, who like to drink a lot. We got prohibition laws, which was really a way of the Protestant ladies to say, you people are just too loud and rude for my taste. So we have laws come out. But women have only been in active and really enabled since the 70s. So what's happened? We're seeing the natural effect of single women with and I won't get into what the pill does to women's brains right now, but we're saying single women become enough of a divergent from the population that they've skewed all the votes. Not only skewed the votes, they've skewed the academy. And they gave the Marxists a bunch of people who would willingly do what they wish, and then the captures the men who are also vulnerable and the men who wish to make use of that leverage that's provided. So do you think I want to be out here talking about this freaking subject? You have any idea how much I feel like, okay, I might as well be out there talking about the virtue of shrunken heads. This is not some subject I want, but the point is, it's normal. What we're going through is a normal process of elevating people from barbarians to participants in an economy and expressing our class interests in the social, political, and economic sphere. So my view is really simple. We just should have given women their own house, and then we'd have been fine. Because that's what the houses are. They're for classes. You have the Senate, which is for business, right? It's really for business owners. And then you have the lower house, right, for the working class. And we should have had a class for women. Why? Because all those groups have divergent interests. And what's the purpose of our form of government? It's a market. What's the difference between the Anglo rule of law system of the common law and the continental Napoleonic system of a continental or Napoleonic law? What's the difference? They rule, we agree. That's why it's such a fucking mess all the time. It's why we're so noisy, because it's a market. It's a bazaar where we have to negotiate under a thing called concurrency. You know what concurrency is? It means the classes agree. Why do we have those houses? Why do we have the what's the thing the president gets elected by? The electoral college. Why do we have that? Because it forces the regions and the classes to agree. Everybody has to agree. It's called post hoc. We have to agree on a thing before it can be. What has the left tried to do? Circumvent that. That's what they've done, lawfare. So what are we trying to do? Restore it. Okay, I'm going way over time, aren't I? Mm-hmm. How far am I over?
You're over by 20 minutes.
Okay. So the problem is we have now, without this market, we've created the problem of democracy without responsibility. So what are the means of antisocial, anti-political, anti-economic, and basically criminal behavior that are expressed by the feminine intuition? Cancel culture. In the common law, you can't do that. You can't only gossip and shame and rally because you get in stocks or you get to fight. It's really interesting. If you've seen how the old Germanic law is they would make the man stand in a hole in the ground and the woman would get to stand on the ground and then they could hit each other with bags with rocks. So perfect. We had these protections in the common law, but they haven't kept pace. And the reason is that, which I'll talk about extensively tomorrow, they just didn't put it they didn't put the common law in the Constitution, they assumed it. And we developed from that the rights law instead of the common law. And the rights law, as the Constitution said, is insufficient, it's not complete. And then we added new classes, we developed new laws. Well, it's really easy to outlaw the feminine thing, which is seduction into false promise by baiting into hazard using the false promise of violation of one of the 4 laws of nature, which are the things we wish that were true that aren't. My point here, I'm trying to get to the end really quickly. My point here is this a big problem? Is there a problem with our civilization?
Oh yeah.
No, we have a really simple fucking problem. We need about a dozen laws that restore the Constitution that prevent the use of baiting into hazard. It's really not hard, and that's the thing I'm trying to get across. we think this is a catastrophic Western civilizational problem. No, it's a problem of having too many young, unmarried women without children who lack any incentive for responsibility instead of personal hyperconsumption, hypergamy. That's all because they vote as a block more consistently because that point of that they don't diverge like we do. They converge to one point. And they're the extreme of the point. They're the extreme the same position of a feminine desire for irresponsibility for the commons in order to maximize personal consumption and personal opportunity. It's not any different from us wanting to go, let's go rape and pillage. It's profitable. It's the same thing, right? We don't allow raping and pillaging. Come on, I mean, how many guys here would go pillaging if they could? I'm not into the raping thing, but the pillaging thing? I mean, I'm all up for pillaging.
I was promised pillaging.
You were promised pillaging? I mean, pillaging's... It's like, I was trying to say, I don't understand those people in Afghanistan. Okay, let me help you out. You get to farm beans in the dirt or heroin in the dirt, or you get to ride around in a pickup truck with your buddies with AR-15s and grenade launchers. Tell me which is more fun if you're a guy. It's not a hard decision. It's really easy. So I guess all I'm trying to get around is that this is a problem. It's a problem of inequality. But inequality of what? It's inequality of genetic interest, right? So that's all it is. It's a natural thing of we've enabled people to express their wants. Have we, as the left projected, converge towards a sexually neutral position, or do the most egalitarian societies diverge into sexual stereotypes? They diverge. Why? Because we don't have to compromise anymore. We can instead seek to fulfill our interests. The whole trick is, are those interests allowing us to perpetuate the family as the central object of society, producing children who are able to become responsible adults to persist the civilization that we inherited from our ancestors? So the problem is, I said there's 3 tools of coercion, right? There's 3 tools. So which one of those tools, negotiation, seduction, or force, produces the outcome fastest?
Force.
Right? Which one of those things has the least volition attached to it? Force. So what is the law? Force. So which tool do we need to put in place that doesn't allow the criminal to say, I like being a criminal, please? It's the law. If we understand the problem isn't that complicated, really. I mean, this is problem of democratic thinking. Well, everybody it's just factions. But so if we say the law is the tool which is most effective at implementing change, because it's the means by which we engineer society, then what do we have to bring about is legal change. And so what are we pivoting to? Lawfare. And because what happens if we fail at lawfare?
It's that other
Yeah, the warfare thing. So this is our last opportunity. All right. Is there any moral ambition beyond, I'm cutting out the next half hour of my talk that I should have had done 20 minutes ago. So is there any more moral ambition that anybody else is proposing? All we're saying is, it turns out to be a really simple fucking problem. And we can fix it by disallowing the false promise, and then that will prohibit the ability to seduce people who are easily seduced by the false promise. All right, did I make my point here today? Did I do okay? I made you laugh a little bit. That was good. I didn't offend the ladies too much. Tell me. Okay, I can't see everybody who's here. There we go. I have my glasses up. So anyway, I thank you very much. I hope this rest of this conference is enjoyable. I hope I did you just service, even though I only did 2/3 of my speech. I hope I did you just service. And as usual, I went over. I love all of you, and it's the most meaningful experience of my life to be able to be in your company. Thank you.